It's a fact or fiction edition here on the final show of the Locked On Giants podcast for 2021. We've got a bunch of things to talk about, and that's coming up next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family. Your team every day. Patricia Traina here with you, and it is New Year's Eve as you watch this show, which means it is the final show of the Locked On Giants podcast for 2021. And folks, we made it. We made it through 2021. Let's give ourselves a hand here. We made it through another lousy season of Giants football, and hopefully things will get better moving forward, but we've got plenty to talk about, and we're going to talk about all that stuff on future shows and whatnot. But first, let me thank you, as always, for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen of the day, or if you're watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. I was actually kind of fascinated. I saw on YouTube the subscriber count was up to 1, 2, 3, 4, which I thought was pretty cool. So thank you, everybody who has subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do so. And please hit that little bell to receive notifications and whatnot. And be sure to take part in our community. Leave a comment, and if you're not on YouTube, you can always send me an email at lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. That for our folks that listen to us on the audio platform. So anyway, we have a fact or fiction show today. We haven't done one of those in a long time, so I thought I would do one to close out 2021. Let's get into it. I mean, there's certainly a lot to talk about. And I'm just going to kind of give you a statement and tell you if I think it's fact or fiction and why. That's kind of how it works. So if you want to chime in, you know what to do. Send me a comment, send me an email, and let's get a discussion going. That's what this show's all about. My feedback and your feedback. That's what makes this show go. So, all right, let's kick it off with fact or fiction. Joe Judge is a lock to return in 2022. Fiction, no one is a lock to return in 2022 unless they are named Mara or Tish, all right? The team owners are not going anywhere. Short of that, no one is a lock to return in 2022. Why is Joe Judge not a lock? Basically, if this team finishes worse than it did last year, if the effort drops off, I can't see how you justify bringing back Joe Judge. Now, with that said, I do think the Giants ownership wants him back. I do think the odds of him coming back are higher than the odds of him not coming back. And not just because, there's money involved, but at some point you have to lay down some continuity. You can't keep changing out the coaching staff every 2 years like the Giants have done. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You're basically starting from scratch, and you've got several young players who are on their rookie deals, and that rookie window is closing, notably Danielle Jones. Saquon Barkley is going to still be on his rookie deal, even though it's the option year. Andrew Thomas is on his rookie deal. You've got several guys who are still on their rookie deal, so you want to be able to take advantage of that while that window is still open. Now, that said, even though I think Joe Judge will be back, I don't think his coaching staff will be back in its entirety. And I've mentioned before, I think Burton Burns, the running backs coach, will retire. He's the oldest member of the staff, and I could see him potentially retiring. I do not think Rob Sale will be back. Even before all this talk about Rob Sale going to Florida to be their new offensive line coach, I didn't think Rob Sale would be back. And the proof's in the pudding, folks. You look at the performance of the offensive line. You look at how that unit has really failed to develop outside of maybe Andrew Thomas. All right, Will Hernandez has gone backwards. Matt Parrott couldn't beat out Nate Solder. Nate Solder has struggled. Corey Cunningham, is okay. Billy Price, steady but not spectacular. Matt Skura was rotating for a little bit there with Wes Martin. Not a good job, if you ask me. And I know part of it is on the players, but a good part of it is coaching. And when that unit just did not take the step forward, after Judge and Dave Gettleman said, "Oh, we like how they work, and we're confident they're gonna take that step forward," you got to look at the coaching there, I think, folks. And look, I like Rob Sale. I appreciate his bluntness and his honesty, but that unit did not thrive under him. And I really believe that even if he hadn't been in consideration for the Florida job, which I still say he takes, I'd be shocked if he doesn't take it, I think Rob Sale would have been out of here. Now, here's the thing with the Giants' offensive line coaching. I felt that they had too many cooks in the kitchen. All right? Here's my logic here. The Giants would have us believe that Sale, Ben Wilkerson, Pat Flaherty, and then Freddie Kitchens, when he worked with the offensive line, that everybody was on the same page. Everybody was speaking the same language. Okay, great. If you have 4 guys that allegedly speak the same language, then why do you need 4 guys? Why not just go with 1 guy? So that just leaves me to wonder if maybe there were some deviations in the coaching and the teaching, how things were being explained. I have no proof of this. This is just my theory, because obviously I'm not in the classrooms with these players, nor am I allowed to watch the entire, practices in season. But while I understood what Joe Judge was trying to do, I just think there were too many cooks in the kitchen. And when you've got 4 people pulling at you, there's just, like I said, if they don't all have the same opinion, you're going to get pulled in different directions. And that's not healthy. It's not good. It's not productive. And even if they are all on the same page, what do you need 4 for? It's like that at that point, you wonder if it's an ego thing about having the biggest staff in the NFL. So that never made sense to me. So, yes, I do think Rob Sale is not going to be back next year. I know he was someone that Joe Judge knew from his past, but look, enough with this getting guys in that you knew from your past. Just go for the best available guys. That's something that drives me nuts about Joe. I like Joe, and I understand, the need to surround yourself with people and things that you're familiar with, but sometimes you just got to step outside of your comfort level. And I don't feel that he's done that enough, which, going back to this whole thing about, is he a lock to be back? I do not think it's 100% slam dunk. I do think ownership is going to say to him, look, there are certain things that you did and didn't do this year that have to change. And what those things are, well, we'll see. I could mention one, and, I've talked about this before, the situation with training camp and treating the beginning of the season like it was an extension of the preseason. That attitude right there has got to go. All right. And I think Joe understands that. And I'm hopeful that he will embrace that moving forward. So that's my first fact or fiction. Let's talk about the second one. And that is Daniel Jones a lock to return? And I'm going to say fiction on that. All right. Now, I know what Judge said. I know he said that Daniel is his quarterback. I know Judge said that Daniel, right now all signs point to Daniel and his neck injury being fine for next year. Great. I hope that's the case because I don't want to see anybody, suffer from a football injury long term. That said, there are no guarantees. All right. Right now, everybody can be ready for training camp. Doesn't matter who it is or what the injury is, but not everybody will be. All right. So do we know Daniel Jones is going to be 100%? We don't. I mean, it took him almost a month before they decided, look, the neck wasn't making enough progress, so let's shut him down. Is he going to be ready? I don't know. I hope he is for his sake. Like I said, I don't wish him any ill will, but you can't put that in stone. Now, I do think the Giants are going to upgrade the backup quarterback position. They have to. I mean, they cannot go another year with Mike Glennon. And hopefully they've learned their lesson on that with, not cutting corners and going for for a guy that has a strong arm but doesn't really have a good track record. So, look, going forward, if the Giants are going to stick with Daniel Jones and he is going to be back, he has shown that he has an injury history now. So you better invest in a good backup quarterback, because chances are history has shown that you're going to have to turn to that backup at some point. And hopefully that's a lesson that they have learned moving forward. Now, some of you are still like, okay, well, what about signing, Marcus Mariota or Teddy Bridgewater, or, trading for Russell Wilson? Russell Wilson, I've said this before, I don't see it happening. They don't have the cap money to get Russell Wilson. They would have to do some massive restructuring. And even then, I don't know that they're going to have enough cap money to sign, Wilson and to sign their draft class. So I just think, folks, that's a pipe dream. It's a nice dream, but I think it's a pipe dream. I do not see Russell Wilson coming over to the Giants. I've said that before, and I will say that again, since we are talking about the quarterback position. So in a nutshell, is Daniel Jones a lock? No. Is there a good chance that he's back next year? Absolutely. That I can get behind. All right, Giant fans, as you get ready for the new year, that means New Year's resolutions are probably been made. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. You'll want to eat it because it's so good. It doesn't taste like other protein bars that are waxy or chalky or have that yucky aftertaste. And most of all, Built Bars are healthy. They contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and about 17 grams of protein. Built Bar makes it so easy to stick to any New Year's resolution you make to eat right. And you can do it without the guilt and the calories, even though each delicious Built Bar is covered in pure milk chocolate, making it taste like a candy bar. So head on over to BuiltBar.com and use our special promo code LOCKED15 to save 15% off your first order. Again, that's LOCKED15 for 15% off your order at BuiltBar.com. All right, Giant fans, you've got the Locked On Giants podcast with Patricia Traina, and we are doing a fact or fiction edition here of the show, the final show for 2021. Hope everybody has plans for tonight, and if you don't have plans, hope you enjoy New Year's Eve. And if you're going out, please be safe out there. Don't drink and drive. I don't want to find out that I've lost any listeners or anybody's had any kind of accident, so please be safe out there. All right, we are doing a fact or fiction edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, and let's continue. Let's talk a little bit about the general manager search. Now, I know there were reports earlier that Kevin Abrams was the leading candidate and the most likely candidate. And, in a nutshell, will the Giants, fact or fiction, will the Giants cast a wide net for their next general manager? I'm going to say fact. I do not believe the Giants are going to limit themselves to just in-house candidates. Look, they did so last time. If you think about it, they interviewed 4 people for the general manager spot after Jerry Reese was let go. Dave Gettleman, who had ties to the organization, Kevin Abrams, who had ties to the organization, Mark Ross, who had ties to the organization, and Louis Riddick, who was an outsider. All right. Something's got to give here. The Giants, in my opinion, have got to cast a wider net. And, everybody talks about how John Mara likes to rely on, what makes him comfortable, that he leans towards familiarity. Okay, again, I get it. Everybody likes to be surrounded by what they know because it takes some of the guesswork out. It takes some of the stress out. But sometimes you've got to roll the dice. And I point back to 1979 when John Mara's father, Wellington Mara, and his, Tim Mara was his cousin, if I'm not mistaken. They were co-owners, all right? And they couldn't agree on a general manager. Pete Rozelle recommended George Young, who came from outside the organization. All right, George Young came from outside the organization, and we all know what George Young did for the Giants. All right, how he got them, built them into a competing team, 2 Super Bowls under his watch. George was a 5-time NFL Executive of the Year. All this because they took a gamble on somebody from the outside. All right, so I would like to see the Giants in their search for a general manager. And again, I have to put this in here because it's not official, and I have to play by the rules here. If the Giants let Dave Gettleman go, or if the Giants and Dave Gettleman part, which, yes, they will. We know they will. I'd like to see them cast a wide net and not recycle guys either. I want to stress that. All right, so I know some of the names that have been connected to the Giants recently, John Dorsey, Scott Pioli. No, I'm not so sure I want those guys in here, and I'll tell you why. It's kind of like with head coaching, right? If you notice, the coaching carousel spins, and guys that maybe didn't do well in one place get hired to another place, and then, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. To me, if it were my call, yes, I would interview those guys, but I would also cast a wider net to include like personnel directors, college scouting people, scouts, anybody with a scouting background, because those people are rising up through the ranks. And sometimes when you get somebody who's rising up from the ranks, they are not only more creative, they are hungrier to produce. All right. So I'm not saying that a Scott Pioli or a John Dorsey wouldn't be hungry. I just think that somebody who has never been in a GM's chair might be the better way to go, because maybe they're going to take a few more chances and not be as conservative. Now, the flip side of that argument is that, the Giants are a mess and they need a massive rebuild, assuming, of course, that they embrace the fact that they need a massive rebuild. And Scott Pioli and John Dorsey have overseen rebuilds before. They obviously, experienced GMs. But this is what I'm talking about stepping outside of the comfort level. Go with somebody who, comes from a forward-thinking organization. You can't go wrong if you pluck somebody from, say, for example, the Baltimore Ravens or the Cleveland Browns or the Indianapolis Colts. Go with somebody like that and see if, maybe that person doesn't have new ideas on how to look at the scouting process. Because right now, you look at the Giants draft classes of late, and they've whiffed a lot on some of the draft classes. They've whiffed on some of the free agent acquisitions, right? Something's not adding up here. So get somebody in here who maybe can look at things objectively, change them up a little bit so that the batting average improves. And, what do you have to lose at this point? What would it hurt to talk to these guys? And P.S., if they do bring these guys in for interviews, I don't want to, see that ownership said, well, we'll give you final say, but we would prefer that you keep Joe and Danielle. No. When George Young was hired, for those of you who don't remember, George wanted total football autonomy, and he got it. All right. So in other words, Wellington Mara and Tim Mara couldn't go to him and say, well, George, you can do whatever you want, but we would rather you keep, this guy or that guy, or maybe look at this guy as your offensive coordinator or this guy as your head coach. No, George Young got to do all that. His attitude was, look, you're hiring me to do a job. Let me do it. Don't interfere. And the results were there. And I would hope that John Mara, who wasn't with the organization at the time in an official capacity, but certainly had a front row seat, as he was growing up, going through school and everything. I would hope that maybe he looks back on that lesson and learns that it's not as scary as it sounds, even if it means bringing in somebody brand new. So I do not think the Giants will settle. I hope they don't settle. Obviously, I don't know what John's thinking because John hasn't spoken as of yet. But gosh, I hope they go outside the organization and they cast that wide net, because I don't want to see just four guys for your GM position, and three of whom came from the organization. That to me that's a half-baked search. And look, get it right for once and for all. Don't cut corners. Okay, the next fact or fiction. Saquon Barkley will be back next year. That's a fact, folks. All right. I know there are people out there who say, well, the Giants should try and trade Barkley while they can. How about we sit back and we see what a new offensive coordinator, hopefully somebody who's innovative, somebody who is creative, we see what he can do with the scheme, and we see what the new offensive line is going to look like before we say Barkley is got to go, that he has to go. How about we sit back and we see what, for example, a new offensive coordinator does with the schemes, and what a new offensive line looks like before we say Barkley has to go. Now, again, the flip side of the argument is people will look at Wayne Gallman last year and Alfred Morris last year and Devonta Booker this year and say, well, those guys are able to run. Yeah, they are. Different style type of runners. But can anybody sit there and honestly say that Barkley has been utilized to his fullest potential? I don't think I can. And if you can, then more power to you. But I don't think I can. And, Barkley is going to be back on his rookie option year. He's going to cost less next year against the cap than he did this year. I think it's like a little over $7 million next year versus $10 million from this year. See what he can do. See if he can be. He'll be 2 years out of that ACL injury, the surgery that he had. The ankle should be healed. See what he brings to the table. If he looks like the stud that you thought you were getting, then we sign him, assuming that, he doesn't want the sun, the moon, and the stars. If he doesn't, you move on. You call it a loss. I mean, look, a new GM coming in is going to probably get rid of a lot of Gettleman's guys anyhow. I mean, we saw how Gettleman basically got rid of a lot of the guys that were here from Jerry Reese's era. So what's to say that a new GM, especially one that comes from outside the organization, doesn't do the same thing? So, yeah, Barkley, I'm not ready to give up on him. Yes, his running style drives me nuts. Yes, I sit there, and when I see him dancing behind the line of scrimmage, I scream out, hit the hole and go, But I'm not ready to say, that's it, get rid of the bum. I don't see that in Saquon. I think he's been slowed down by the ankle injury, which is a factor. And I think he can, behind a good offensive line, with a good scheme behind him, he can be effective. All right, Giant fans, the sports world is heating up. We have college football bowl games. We have the NFL playoff race taking shape. That should be finalized in another week. NBA, NHL, all kinds of different sports. And no matter what sport you follow, BetOnline has you covered all year long with more props, more odds, and lines than ever before. Head on over to their new updated or mobile website at betonline.ag and sign up today to receive a 50% welcome bonus with the promo code Locked On. Don't wait. Take advantage of all the amazing offers they currently have available. Visit BetOnline today and get your 50% welcome bonus with the code Locked On. Again, that's betonline.ag. All right, Giant fans, you got Patricia Traina here on the Locked On Giants podcast. We are doing a fact or fiction edition of the show, our final show for 2021. Gosh, can you believe the year has just flown by? And before I forget, let me first thank everybody for another amazing year. The Locked on Giants podcast, thanks to you guys and gals, we had over 1 million downloads and listens, and that's just very humbling. And I thank you for the bottom of my heart for staying with me, for listening to me. I know some of you listen to me every day. Some of you don't listen to me every day, and that's fine. But everything is appreciated, and I'll just continue to do the best I can with giving you guys insightful shows, thoughtful shows. We'll get guests. We'll do all kinds of stuff with a very busy off season ahead. Even though we won't have playoffs to talk about, boo. But we'll have stuff to talk about. Don't worry about that. So thank you, everybody. And again, be safe if you're going out for New Year's Eve. So, all right, we've got one more fact or fiction that I want to talk about. And that is the Giants are in rebuild mode. Fact, 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 fact. In my opinion, fact. I've spoken about how the Giants don't really have an identity as a whole, as a franchise, other than right now they're a franchise in disarray. That stems, I think, from not standing up and embracing who they are. And, what they are is a team that has been rebuilding. Dave Gettleman in 2018 admitted that, hey, maybe we made a few mistakes along the way and that set us back. And they did, the intentions at the time were pure. But that stemmed from holding on to Eli Manning a little too long, and just kind of trying to build to support him as opposed to getting things ready for the next quarterback. I've made this comparison before. It's kind of like, you're expecting a baby and you don't get your house ready for the new baby. And then all of a sudden the baby's here and, oh gosh, we didn't get a crib. We didn't get a changing table, a carriage, a stroller, and all the things that the baby needs to be, to be comfortable and, fit into your life. Well, that's what happened with the Giants. They came in 2018, thought that they could rebuild and compete, and it proved to be not the case. And instead of fixing it, they kept trying to tweak, because obviously the pressure was starting to get to them. Hey, we haven't been to the playoffs in a while. We got to, do what we can and take some shortcuts here and there. And they tried that, most recently this year, they tried shortcuts with free agency. And free agents, I might add, who had injury histories or who were, in some cases on the tail end of their career, not the same player that they were years ago. So they basically broke every single rule about roster building that they tried to avoid the year before. And the result, you add that in, you add in the injuries and the COVID losses and all that stuff, and you have a mess of a franchise. So to me, the first thing the new GM and ownership need to sit down and do when they, when the new GM starts work, is they've got to look in the mirror and they've got to be honest and say, this franchise is in rebuild mode. We've got to build through the draft. Okay. We've got to supplement where we can, obviously, with free agency, which is not necessarily going to be the case this year because they've got a bad cap situation, which we'll talk about at some point next month in January, and just figure out a plan to address it. It's kind of like you're rebuilding a house. Nobody rebuilds a house without blueprints and sketches and whatnot. The Giants, just in sitting back and watching them from year after year, I never got the sense that they really had a cohesive plan that built off of the previous year. So I would like to see them just admit we are in rebuild. Now, does that mean more losing football? Could be. But I don't know about you guys. As much as I'm frustrated and tired of the losing football, if I have to go through another year or two, knowing that things are looking up and things are going to get better and this team, is going to start to be competitive, I think I could swallow that. I mean, heck, we've come this far. And I know some of you are like, well, I'm 80 years old, I'm 90 years old. I'd like to see the Giants win one more time in my lifetime. You never know. You might get lucky with this team, if they are smart about how they put things together. That's the key word, if they are smart. So to me, it just starts with embracing who they are. And right now, they are a team that's in disarray. They're a team that desperately needs a rebuild. All right. To me, nobody should be safe except for maybe Andrew Thomas. And, then you can make an argument, Leonard Williams, you might make an argument about, Kadarius Toney, guys that they have big money invested in, that if you cut them at this point, you're going to really mess up your cap. But otherwise, nobody's really safe. And the new GM, when he or she comes in, they have to not be afraid to make those tough decisions. And there will be tough decisions that need to be made. And my hope is that the person that does come in doesn't sit there and go back to the future, the past rather. All right. Oh, let's bring this guy in because I work with him at my old team. Enough of that. I never really liked that approach. It's like, oh, let's bring in the Alabama guys or the Georgia guys or guys that we know on the coaching staff because we're familiar with them. Hey, there's a whole big world out there of other schools, other systems. Reach out. To me, to settle and stay with what you know, eventually that means it's going to collapse upon yourself. And it's not a smart way to build a franchise. It's not a smart way to build a team. And I would hope that the next GM, when they get in here, realizes that and they open up the doors and really look outside of the comfort zone that seems to have been established right now in the organization. All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for this edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. As always, appreciate you for making us your first listen or your first watch of the day. Again, have a happy new year. We'll be back on Monday to talk about the Giants-Bears game. Yeah, 2 more games, folks. We have to do this. So just bear with me. I know a lot of you at this point are like, why are you even bothering recapping the games? I have to, all right? It's part of the schedule. So just bear with me. 2 more reviews, 1 more crossover show, and then I can open up the schedule wide open to do, more stuff that you guys and gals want to see. So, we'll do the review on Monday, Twitter Tuesday, of course, we'll do. And then we'll just keep on plugging as we go through the final week of the Giants regular season. So until then, again, Happy New Year. Be safe. We'll talk to you next year.